Welcome to the Ascend Health Show. I'm Nick Angelis. I'm one of the owners of Ascend Health Center, and I'm a nurse anesthetist. And today, we have our first returning guest here on the show. So Barb Vetter is back. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Nick.
And last time we talked a lot about understanding your feelings, realizing that maybe instead of saying, I'm sad, it's better to think, well, I'm perturbed or frustrated or disappointed. And that helps us understand ourselves and also resolve conflict. So today we wanted to go even deeper into conflict about how to resolve it, what leads to it, and all those other messy issues, because I'm sure no one comes to your office just saying, hey, I made an appointment just to let you know I'm getting along with everyone in my life. Just want to give you an update on that.
That's hilarious because no, usually there's a problem to be solved for people to come in. And, you know, with conflict can be a serious argument like where are we going for Christmas? Or it can be something lighter like where are we going for dinner? Mm-hmm. But conflict is a clash of values, and it can be, again, a serious argument or something that's a little bit of a lighter argument, but it still does require some learning how to navigate and negotiate when you're having a conflict. There's often a clash of values, like, okay, do we travel on Christmas, or are my values that we stay home at Christmas time? So you really have to dig into those value systems to see how we're going to negotiate and make this decision.
So are values also related to traditions? For example, I was thinking, as you said, Christmas, that some years I've put up a tree, other years I didn't feel like it. Well, other people, it's like, okay, here's what we do Christmas Eve, here's when Santa comes, where everything is, this is how my family has done it for generations.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because that would be a strong value, because a value means something that you regard highly or that you esteem very strongly. So if you esteem a tradition and maybe your partner doesn't think that tradition is that great. Like in our family, we always used to chop down a live Christmas tree, get on a hayride, and take it home and put up a live tree. Mm-hmm. Well, there was the first year where the kids had moved out and we bought a fake tree. And that was really hard to switch over that tradition and sort of change my value system because it wasn't going to be the same as it was previous.
So part of it is deciding, does this value still hold, or can I wouldn't say shirk away from it, or is it as important to me as it used to be? Mm-hmm. So this might be a strange question, but do values have to be valuable? Because maybe I set up a string of, and everyone's going to think we're filming this in December instead of June. I guess we could talk about Father's Day and Mother's Day, but maybe I just put up a string of lights and put them up in November and take them down in March because I'm lazy. Maybe my value is that I like being lazy. Is that a fair value, or do these values have to be valuable?
This is where we get into the conflict because
that sounds like I'm about to have a conflict with someone.
Yeah.
It's like, here's my value laziness.
Yeah. And that's where it becomes a point of negotiation, because it could really be offensive to me if you leave the lights up, or if let's go back into Father's Day. If you don't have a barbecue on Father's Day, if your family wants to go out to dinner and my family wants to have a barbecue. Mm-hmm. So then there's a clash of values. And so it is things that you regard highly because, well, our family has always had, cookouts. And now we're in partnership and your family wants to go out to eat on Father's Day. Mm-hmm. So now we have a clash of values. So it is a point where both people are esteeming something highly. And now how do we make some concessions, but we don't feel like it's a win-lose situation where, oh, okay, you win all the time, Nick, because we get to do what you want to do all the time, and I always have to yield. And then I can get hurt feelings from that if I'm always feeling like it's a win-lose instead of a negotiation.
Right, for sure. Just pressing a button there because I messed that up. which isn't too unusual since one of my values is winging these shows. But it still makes sense, however, that so maybe part of this whole value system that you're explaining is, do I feel valued? Is that part of it? Because, for example, I usually feel valued in my ability to be flexible. So one of my values, I guess, is being able to take someone else's value and putting that above mine, because I can be fairly laid back. I don't get, there's that word again, perturbed easily. So for me, that's how I feel I really contribute to a relationship, is that I can move around and make sure that your values are important and that we can do things your way. But I also have to make sure that that's not conceit. That's not just me being so prideful of like, look at how flexible I am. I have this ability that few people have to avoid conflict by maneuvering around it. Because as you said, conflict is often where, do I actually value the ability to do things the other person's way? That itself can get into really complex conflict.
But you do bring up an important issue as far as who's the one that's surrendering or yielding all the time? Is it the more flexible person? If I'm routine and I don't like to shift away from my routine, I want to keep on that routine, and you're flexible, that could actually be a clash right there, because I might feel that I'm always let's say you're the one giving because you're the one flexible. So eventually what's going to happen is you're going to feel a little bit defeated and deflated because you're always in the giving mode. Right. And then I'm always in the receiving mode. And then it turns out that one person feels like it's not an equal relationship. Why am I always the one making the concession? And so that's when something inside of you might rise up and say, well, I've been flexible 99% of the time. This is the one time I'm going to make a requirement. So why don't you go along with it? And that's the clash.
Right, especially because then the other person might not know how to do that, because we haven't given them the opportunity to be flexible or to have this shift in the give and take. And I think also we have to realize, again, in my particular case, since I only know myself, historically I'm laid back, but of course the older I get, the more set I am in my ways. So there's that danger of where we think we're a certain way and we're not really that way, which obviously is where a therapist comes in, because I see that all the time at Ascend Health Center, where a patient comes in and says, okay, here's my issue, I really know myself, and just in interacting with them we realize, no, that's not the issue at all. Many times the issue is simply that someone's lonely, or they don't have a support system, or they've driven everyone away. And I really value close communication, and you can tell I'm not a therapist by the words I use, but I've told a patient before that I think the issue is that you're crabby, that it's not this neurotransmitter deficiency, it's simply that this is how you come across, people avoid you, and it's led to this dearth of relationships where you're all by yourself. So like, here's what we have to work on. So I would never say that to somebody, but when we look a little bit deeper and you ascend down into your inner person, it's finding what is in there, because there could be bitterness or resentment or hurts or anger that could be in there. And what happens, relationships stimulate that, and it brings out some of the pain and the emotional suffering that might be hiding. And so the person likely doesn't want to be that way, but they don't know how to navigate the depth of resentment, bitterness, depression, discouragement. Right. And so then if there's just something simple like, where are we going to go for Father's Day, when you're thinking, well, it's a simple question, why did it trigger you so much? Then we find out maybe there's arguments in the home every Father's Day. So it's triggered an internal pain or some kind of conflict that's internal. And then I'm starting to have the conflict with you because it triggered something in me. Right. So it's almost like a habit where this situation or this holiday always brings up something, and then the other person is unaware of that history and they just kind of walk into it. So does it help for us to detail our own history of, okay, here's all my triggers, or is that sort of a self-defeating process where you end up with this narrow relationship where you can talk about the weather and the Browns, but not the Cavs because of that thing that happened, and the Indians are a trigger, and let's not talk about the town of Akron, but Cleveland is okay.
That's what most people do, Nick, is they end up avoiding some of those challenging topics, and they start to just have more of a surface and a light conversation, and we're not going really deep, we're only going surface level, like where do you want to go for dinner? Then we get there and we don't go into some really soul connecting conversations because we're afraid of them. So people get really fearful to go into those places that might be a values clash, and they don't know what to do with it. But there are ways and there are tools and there are questions that you can learn to communicate and ask each other, having good listening skills, good perception skills. But that's not natural. That's unnatural, and we have to learn that, how to go deep.
So if we feel ourselves with this skill deficiency, it's not a cause for us to be, as you said, disempowered or deflated. It just means, oh, here's an area where I could use some skills, just like in every other area in life.
Yeah, and I love that, a skill deficiency, because that can be filled. You can find ways to prop up that deficiency and put some emotional nutrition in there and take care of that lack by learning. And therapy and skill building is actually really effective. It's amazing how people move into an academic and educational understanding of how to navigate emotions.
Right.
But it's the fear, and that's where your work comes in, is, you have a way of calming people down enough so they can face their emotional pain, and that's what your work does. And then my work, I talk through that emotional pain.
Right. And it's always a balance. So our psychiatrists and the nurse practitioners at Ascend Health Center, it's often, okay, here's the pill that will help, but at the same time, let's not make your brain so foggy so that therapy doesn't work anymore. Or sometimes there'll be the ketamine infusion that's expand the mind and expand the consciousness to realize what's underneath, which itself isn't appropriate for all patients. Some patients walk away from that, like, I don't really want to see what I'm really like. But I think you do have to have a variety of tools available, and then you need to figure out what's the right tool for this patient. And ideally, that right tool is therapy, because it's a whole lot less invasive than trying a new psychiatric medication or some of the treatments that we have at Ascend for treatment-resistant depression. It's always best to see, can you have a good relationship with a therapist and go from there, and really expand that relationship to other areas of your life as well, where it's not just, okay, I have my therapist, I'm set, but can I use these tools to now form relationships around me where I can have good, trusted sounding boards?
It's scary to go deep. Like, what if I don't like what I see in there? And you mentioned the crappy personality. And to be honest, we all have a crappy side to our personalities.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was bitter about that, or that really hasn't been healed in me.
Right.
Whatever it is, it could be an emotional wound, like some kind of former resentment. Maybe you were bullied in middle school and you really haven't tapped into that, and you feel bullied all the time because it just kind of grew up with you. And so then now you have conflict, feels and reminds me of when I was bullied, so now I have some resentment, and I can't have conflict because it reminds me of a time that I haven't really worked through yet.
Right. And that particular patient, their thing with me was saying, you know what, medical professionals have tiptoed around me all my life. Can I come to a place where it's not professional, where, this is what they actually said, where I can make fun of you and you can make fun of me? And I was like, well, we can alter our professionalism to make that happen for you, sir.
Yeah.
But that is a good point, that for many people, they just want to hear what's going on. Can you, and I don't notice doing this until I have a lot of doctors and nurse practitioners that come to our clinic, because we can fix people quickly, and it's not some of the mind alterations that you can see with some of the medications. And when I have another nurse anesthetist, giving a treatment, I realize even I use certain words that are a little bit patronizing, that until I'm with someone who's also in my profession, I don't catch the fact that, okay, even though I really like being able to say things plainly, I still word things in a way that's not completely open. And a lot of times that's what people need, is that they need to be able to trust. They need transparency of what's really going on with me. Because they've already heard you'll do fine, here's a positive affirmation, here's your participation trophy, get out there and do life.
Yeah. And to be emotionally strengthened enough to where I could say, wow, Nick, that really hurt my feelings when you said that. And then what would you say if I said that? Wow, Nick, that really hurt my feelings.
Right, and at first we want to rationalize it. Well, I didn't mean it that way, but I'm sure part of the learning that you teach your clients is, well, let's go to this moment right now. Let's see it for what it is and respond appropriately. Let's not go back to another time when someone felt their feelings were hurt, but they're being manipulative. Let's accept people at face value, and we can worry about the other sides of it or the other possibilities later.
So true, because if we've been inappropriately handled with our emotions and not respected and not found worthy, that your emotions are worthy, that your hurt is worthy, if it's like, get up, shake it off, it's not important, just move on and go about your work, then we start to live and believe like that we're always shaking it off and we're never attending to some of those painful memories that spell hurt. And so we get dismissive with ourselves. And part of being in therapy is finding your inner self and what things I need to deal with self to self. And when you feel safe with the therapist or in a room with someone else to bring that out, because those feelings are really sacred. When we were hurt back in a time where we weren't empowered to deal with it, we had to just suck it up. Then they build on top of each other, and we get calloused. And then when somebody touches that area of pain, then we can get angry.
Right, and probably the reaction doesn't quite match the infraction either, because at that point we can't choose a moment when we'll tip over. So it might be this blowout argument about the Christmas lights when it's not at all about the Christmas lights.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So it does come back to making sure your values are valued and that you're valued as a person. But does it ever go the other way where people are too introspective, where instead of having a harmless, we use the word crabby, just two people being crabby and having a quick argument where we're like, no, this is something deeper, and we keep going deeper and deeper into what's really going on here until we exhaust ourselves? Because I feel, especially for those who've been in mental health, that can be a risk too, where every skirmish becomes this war of like, well, wait, let's really get to the bottom of this, but there's really nothing there other than somebody having a bad day.
Good point. It's kind of why therapy can go 1 to 2 hours and then we bookmark it, because there are certain traumas that you have to bookmark because you would keep going down into exhaustion, and that's why once a week and not just trying to do it in 8 hours. And a lot of people are confused about that. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. So that means you stay up till 2 in the morning. And that's the law of diminishing return. You're really not going to get, some effective experience when you're tired and just maybe hungry and you've spent everything. So it is a skill to learn when to bookmark something and not to belabor it and keep going on and on. But it's also a skill. Sometimes you just need a minute to remember that pain that happened and just say, you know what, but I did deal with that. That's forgiven. I'm healed and I can move on.
Right. No, that makes sense. So instead of using our trauma as trophies to bring out whenever it seems relevant, sometimes it's as simple as something happened, it was bad, I dealt with it, now I can move on with my life. And if something triggers me or if I remember it, I can pause for a moment, but then I continue to move on.
And there is a difference between stuffing it and shaking it off and actually being healed. Because if there's a traumatic emotional wound and emotional wounds aren't always from, like we think of post-traumatic stress from being in the military or your house burned down or something. It can be something as simple as being bullied as a child or something else happening. Those are traumas too.
Right.
But when the pain gets on the outside and you can look at it and it's out here and it's not in here anymore as it was, then you're moving into effective healing.
Right. So you're perceiving what's really going on, which is something I brought a copy of your book, actually, Renewed Mind. And that was something that you talked about in one of the first chapters where, and I'll take this completely off context just to confuse our listeners, but where how do you find out why the monkey is stealing your crops? Meaning, can you discern the reason why, in that case, the farmer started to spoil it for everyone, decided to plant fruit trees, and then the monkeys will go to the fruit trees instead of his butternut squash, I think it was. But how do we find out why we're doing these things, or what's the source of it? Again, without expanding all of our energy into this introspective, never-ending, wormhole of let me find every bad thing that happened to me and apply it to Tuesday.
Yeah, but we want to learn not how to be dismissive of our emotions, but once we get to the core, we uncover and we find things, then we use that. We can be driving and feel a twinge of hurt, and we're thinking, wait a minute, I'm just on my way to work. Then you start to learn quickly to be introspective and to deal with it fast. Right. So you get more skilled at using your tools, so it doesn't continue to be such a lengthy experiential spiral when you're finding your emotions.
Right. And maybe that's the clue, that when we find ourselves spiraling, that's when, okay, maybe I'm getting caught up in something that's beyond just figuring out the root and dealing with it. So, and I think that's especially important for, I'm a fairly driven person, so a lot of times it's, well, I must achieve this or I must succeed, but you're saying the goal is actually a reconciled relationship, not necessarily like, okay, we got exactly down to the root of it and here's the exact solution, because because there really isn't a solution for, I like to go out on Father's Day and you like to grill. Are we going to take a George Foreman grill to the restaurant? Like, a lot of times compromise is actually a silly solution that doesn't work for anyone, especially the restaurant where you have your grill and you're trying to flip burgers.
Well, and it's being healthy enough to make a concession. Because if we say on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to go here or do this, and we both end up 7 to 7, we maybe didn't get our ideal, we didn't get our 10, but we used a little bit of our skills and we made concessions without it being a win-lose.
Right.
So it might be a win-win. We both met our goals of having dinner on Father's Day, but we gave a token of we were congenial to the other person.
Right.
And you have to learn how to do that, because we can be very competitive. And that's in a partnership. We don't want competition all the time. We want mutuality and unity and agreement so that we can just succeed and move forward and possibly give up a little bit, but that's how negotiation comes into play.
Right. And it sounds like you can practice these skills for something that's a bit mundane, like how you're going to spend Father's Day. And so that way, when a real crisis occurs or when we really need those skills, we're warmed up, we're ready to go.
So true. You have to practice them. Things just don't happen 1, 2, 3 sessions and all of a sudden I'm a skilled emotional intelligence expert. It really, the research does say, neuroscience, it takes 63 days to change a habit. So you've got to work that habit and work the tools, work the skills, grow, and then when you start to see success, which you will, I see it all the time. People are amazed at how much inner growth that they have by learning to use some skills.
Wow. So if any of our viewers want to know more about how you can help them, what's the best way for them to come into contact with you?
You can call my number, which it's on the screen, or check out my website, move around there a little bit, and feel free to call and make an appointment.
Okay. And same with us, if you need psychiatry, as we do have ketamine, Spravato, TMS, a lot of treatments for anxiety, depression. It's ascendhealthcenter.com or 754-4844. And as I've said many times, we prefer to work closely with area therapists, psychiatrists, because we're all in this together. And many times it is a complex case where it takes more than one person to really have all the tools to move forward, because it's one thing to just say, okay, my symptoms are a little bit better, or I'm not suffering quite as much. But when we want true healing, when we really want to expose the root of everything and move on, it really does take that trust and both understanding your values and feeling valued.
It's really true.
Absolutely.
And it does take practice. So don't be hard on yourself. To anyone that's thinking, well, I can do this on my own. I should be able to just pull myself up by my bootstraps and do this on my own. And you setting your ego aside and asking for help and reaching out is a huge step toward getting that support that's going to bring value and healing to your heart.
Absolutely. I've heard that saying all the time, and I usually respond with, where's your bootstraps? It's been a long time since I've seen any bootstraps anywhere on any boots or any shoes. Nobody uses bootstraps. Get somebody to help you already.
Yeah, it's not, sometimes it's an ego thing. You know, our ego gets in the way, but we need experts all the time. You know, we need accountants, and we need teachers, we need lawyers, we need, general practitioners. We need people to support us, web designers, and people that we can't know and do everything on our own. And when you get a professional to support you and help you, it really makes a difference.
Right, because you have that relationship. Because I often fall into that of, I'm not a handyman, but I'm sure I can watch a YouTube on this. And then I realize, nope, should have called the handyman. This is a lot worse than it was before I watched that YouTube.
Yeah, that's funny.
Well, thanks for coming back on the show.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Absolutely. And thanks to you all for watching us. This has been the Ascend Health Show.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.